Growing for Market magazine, and I'm here in beautiful, like I said, Quebec with Dan Brisebois and Emily Board at Ferme Coopérative Tourne-Sol. And actually, is it Tourne-Sol Cooperative Farm? How do I even say the name?
Tourne-Sol Cooperative Farm is what you'd say in English.
Okay. See that? Okay, so because of course, Quebec is mostly French-speaking province, and so I've seen the farm name written both ways. And so for English speakers, it's Tourne-Sol is sunflower, so it's like
Yeah. So Tourne-Sol is sunflower. There's also a play on words. There's a hyphen in the middle. That means it's also turn the soil.
Oh, thank you. Okay, I definitely did not get that. Tell people where we are. We're southwest of Montreal here?
Yeah, we're just about 45 minutes west of the island of Montreal. So the area is, we're sort of bordering the suburbs. The city is kind of coming out to where we are, but it's still a very agricultural area. There's a lot of dairy out here. There's a lot of cash crop as well. And then our farm grows seeds, flowers, vegetables, and we run a CSA, and we have a seed company as well.
Okay, well, yeah, that's what I noticed driving out here. It's a beautiful agricultural area. I saw a lot of big dairies and things like that. There have been a few articles about Tourne-Sol in Growing for Market over the years, and we're actually going to link to some of them in the show notes for this. But just in case people haven't read all those articles, can you go a little bit deeper tell us a little bit more about the farm?
So, Tourne-Sol, we started the farm in fall of 2004 when we planted our first garlic crop. 2005 was our first growing season. And we started at that point with 5 people as a worker cooperative. And our business has grown since then to now we have 11 members in our worker co-op and about 20 people working, part or full-time for the farm. And we, as Emily said, we run a CSA. So we produce vegetables, we produce seeds predominantly. About half of our sales are through a more or less 500-member weekly CSA, and then the other half is through our seed business. We have an online store and sell directly to customers, and then we also have a rack program and sell seed racks in nurseries, health food stores, and other kinds of businesses.
Wow. Okay. So you've been in business about 20 seasons then, if 2004. Yeah. Well, congratulations. That's a long time. And there's really a couple kind of unusual things at least to my mind about your farm. And so one of them is the seed aspect. There's not every farm does seed sales, and I think we'll have some time later to look at that a little bit more. Was the seed business something that you were doing from the beginning, or how long has that part of the business been going on?
We have been doing seed from the beginning, but in our first year of the farm, we did 110 CSA shares in 2 farmers markets in terms of vegetable sales, and then we sold about $700 of seeds, which was like 2 seed contracts for a couple ounces of tomato seed. So we have been doing seeds since the beginning, but it's been very small in terms of dollar value. Though, like I've been growing seeds, for maybe about 4 or 5 years before the farm started. And when we started this farm, I did have a seed garden. We were growing some of the crops, some of the seed that we were using ourselves. But again, it was a small part of the business, and it's something that grew with us, and it grew, I guess, organically. Ultimately, when we started, we were selling a bit of seed on contract to a couple other seed companies, small amounts, and then we increased that volume, and then we started going to these events in Canada called Seedy Saturdays, which are kind of like a once-a-year farmers market where there's a dozen or sometimes more, sometimes less seed companies that sell their seeds. And so we started going to those, and we had a seed catalog. It was a printed piece of paper with like 20 varieties. So this is our list this was our catalog, and then we were there in person, and so we sold seeds that way. And the number of seeds we grew, or were growing ourselves and offering, grew over time. And And probably around 2011 is when we started having an online store, and the seeds started to become a bigger part of the business at that point. We were also growing seeds on contract for a number of seed companies, and that was a larger part of our seed revenue. And someplace, maybe 2016, 2017, we made a decision to scale the seed business up to be larger. And we had taken a long time to do that, because when we first started, I've been always paying attention to other seed companies, and I saw a few seed companies that were scaling up that had problems, either customer service or product problems, like seed quality problems. And I noticed with some companies that were selling to some growers in Quebec that if you burnt if you burnt the bridge once with these growers, it took 3 or 4 years to get them back to even try your seed again. And so I didn't want us to do that. I wanted us to grow really naturally and not push the growth. Mm-hmm. And then, after been doing this for 10, 12 years, we had customer service that felt like we could ship within 2 days. It wasn't going to take us 2 months to ship something. We did have reliable germ tests that we could, the seed quality stuff was under control. The customer service stuff was under control. And then it felt that we couldn't do that push. And so around 2016, we started to expand more consciously. And it kind of overlapped with the pandemic. That came at a really good time for us when we were already trying to expand and were able to use that momentum that came with everybody discovering that food grows at home too. And we were able to kind of ride that wave.
Yeah.
And so to go from $700 a year of sales to, at this point, it's about half of our gross sales are in seeds, and that's how it happened.
I think there's a couple things that you guys doing that are easier said than done. So one part is the seeds, and the other part is the cooperative aspect.
I just wanted to, I don't know if push back's the right word, I just wanted to kind of throw a few words into about the difficulty of seeds, because one of my goals, my secret agendas, is to get more market gardeners to grow seed at home. And if you want to offer top quality seeds for sale, you definitely have to do a lot of things right.
Yeah.
But if you're just growing seed for yourself, there's a lot more flex where you can ignore some of the isolation distances. And you never want to harvest diseased plants, but you can have you can do it a little bit more sloppily, even if it's for your own use. And so I don't want people to be scared to grow seed or to keep some varieties on their own farm.
Yeah. So the other thing that's easier said than done that I wanted to ask you guys about is the cooperative farm aspect. And you had an article in Growing for Market magazine. Oh, I forget which issue it is, but within the last year or two, talking about cooperative farms. And so I'll say we'll make that article public and link to it in the show notes, so that if people want to get all the details on the cooperative farming aspect, that they can. But one of the things that you talk about in that article is how I think sometimes people might get together and think like, let's start a cooperative farm. But I do feel like it is the kind of thing that it takes some doing to maintain it for 20 years. Like a cooperative farm that has been around for 20 years is pretty unusual, I feel like, because there's it's a great idea. Once again, I don't want to discourage people from farming cooperatively, but I think one of the good things about your article is that it could promote people to have their eyes open and think about all the decisions and agreements that need to come together to farm cooperatively, because I can think of some farms that I've known that have fallen out over scale. Like, do we want to have a big farm, or do we want to have a smaller farm? Crops they want to grow, what kind of markets they want to have, and things like that. So I just wanted to note that that's to me that's a really interesting thing about your farm. And could you just give us kind of like talk a little bit, or a nutshell about a little bit of the history of the cooperative aspect of your farm, and how that works. And if people want the deep dive, they can read the article, but I just wanted to make sure and talk about it a little bit while we're here.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you how we got started. So we all were studying at McGill University at the McDonald campus in agriculture and plant science and agricultural engineering and related related topics, and we had been working together on different farms in the summer for summer jobs, and like many people in our situation, we thought, oh, it'd be so great if we could get together and have our own farm. And then we had the opportunity to rent the land that we're farming right now. And so quickly, it felt like there was a bit of a snowball, and a bunch of folks got together. And what was challenging for us initially is that there were no other worker cooperatives in agriculture at the time. In Quebec, there's a long history of cooperatives, especially we've got lots of like credit unions and that sort of thing. And there's a lot of sort of producer cooperatives where you'd have lots of different farmers producing their products and then marketing it together. But as a workers' cooperative, that structure didn't exist, where we would be different workers working the same farm, producing the same things together. So a lot of it, I think, really challenging initially. There was no one to look to as an example. So we kind of had to piece it together and figure it out as we went along. And what's really gratifying is that there are now in Quebec many worker cooperatives that are starting that are as farms, and or farms starting as worker cooperatives. And it's really gratifying to see that, and it's great to see that that it is sort of a sustaining kind of structure that people are able to implement.
Okay, well, when we started initially, the five of us who started the co-op, we each put in, I think, about $2,000 in common, and that gave us like $10,000 of cash flow to start the business. Which we had a lot of other support from other people, other farmers and stuff to help us get going, because $10,000 only goes so far.
Yeah.
And each person with a worker co-op, because that's how we're incorporated as a worker co-op, each person has one vote, independent of the number of shares in the business that they own. So we chose this model because kind of like, I guess ideologically, to be more equitable and democratic as an institution. So that's kind of how it started. And as it grew, we started hiring people. And then we started to get to the point where, do we want to have more people join the co-op? And so now, it took a while to work out all the system. But what it is now is, if somebody works for us for 18 months, at that point they can ask to be an auxiliary member of the co-op. And so that's basically like a trial period. And so at that point we say yes or no. And if they come on as an auxiliary member, that lasts 18 months. And at the end of it, they can make a request to be a full-time member, which gives us another chance to say yes or no. And at this point, it's an important time to really reflect on, do we want this person as part of the co-op?
Yeah.
And so they can, if we say yes, they join the co-op, and then they're a full member. At the end of each year, if there's a profit, it gets divided. It gets returned to the members in function of previous hours they worked, and some of it goes into shares, and some of it might be cash. And so the original members accrued a certain amount of shares in the business, and what we decided when we started accepting more members is that we raised the qualifying share, or the joining share, from $2,000 to $7,000. I'm pretty sure it's $7,000. Though it's not necessarily paid out in one lump sum, it can be deducted from people's wages on at each paycheck. I think it's like 5%. So over time, they can have that amount deducted. So it's not a cash flow problem for them. So then they become co-op members. And what it means to be a co-op member is, you do get to benefit if there's profit in the business, though we do try to also give bonuses to all our non-members too if we're doing really well. But the members would probably have a larger share of profit. There's decision-making power, and so at our co-op, there's different levels of decision-making power. There's a board of directors that's kind of looking at the long-term vision and the way membership works and all that. And then there's kind of like an operating circle that's more dealing with day-to-day stuff, and then there's production circles beneath that. But as a co-op member, you get potentially have a seat at the table at that board of directors, which is kind of guiding the long-term vision of the farm. And it's at that point that everybody has one vote, independent of number of shares that they own.
Okay.
And so being a member gives you really a goal and a guiding voice in the direction of where the farm's going to go. But in many regards, being a member looks kind of similar to being a non-member in that there's work to do. There's farming to do, there's harvest to do, there's different kind of, maybe it's social media, maybe it's bookkeeping, and so that's most of what we do is those tasks, and whether a member or not.
One thing that's interesting about worker co-ops is that the co-op exists to create work for the workers. So that's something that when we're looking at business planning, we're taking into account, or who are the members, what is the work that the members want to be doing, and trying to shape our business around that. Which is not to say that obviously people can work here and not be members, and we do hire employees and staff. But that the guiding principle of the co-op is to create work for the members that the members want to be doing. So that's it's a nice way to frame sort of the larger discussions and directions.
Right. Okay. So the goal is not to mechanize everything as much as possible. It's to keep people in work that they like to be doing. That's good for the world.
Well, yeah, sure.
Hopefully.
Hopefully, yeah.
You could have all kinds of worker co-op, but on a worker co-op that's an organic farm, I think we have values that are aligned with better ecology and environmental
for sure.
purpose.
Did you say you have a 500 member CSA?
Around
so,
500.
Around 500 members pick up on a weekly basis.
Yeah. Okay.
So some people pick up bi-weekly, so that kind of changes the number, but 500's a good number.
Okay, so that's a good. Yeah, so you're doing about 500 CSA shares a week, which to me it sounds like a lot. I mean, that's a pretty big.
It's a lot.
Yeah, it's a pretty big CSA.
And we're producing that on about 6 acres of vegetables.
That sounds very intensively. I mean, to get produce for 500 people a week off of 6 or 7 acres.
It's pretty close.
Yeah.
It's, I would say, semi-intensive. It's not as intensive as some. We tend to not double crop the same beds unless maybe in a greenhouse.
Yeah.
But in the field, we crop once, and then afterwards we go to a regime of cover crops. But it's definitely a lot of work.
Yeah.
We phased out of farmers markets about 5 or 6 years ago.
Yeah.
Again, another thing that was really good. We had phased out 1 or 2 years before the pandemic, and we wanted our weekends back. Most of the people, like the founding members, are starting to have kids, and the just with family, with kids at home, it's just easier to have your Saturday and Sunday. So we, over a few years, we figured out how to phase out the farmers market by increasing our CSA numbers and a couple other little things that we did. And so when the pandemic came, we didn't have to worry about farmers markets shutting down. And instead, we had CSA running out, or selling out like 2 months earlier than usual.
What do you grow for your CSA? Or maybe it's, I don't know, maybe it's easier to say what you don't grow. I mean, I know a lot of people do a little bit of everything. Are there any crops that you specialize in, or any crops that you hate and you don't grow?
We do buy in a few things. We buy in sweet corn, and we buy in potatoes. And we've moved to buying in broccoli. We've really struggled with producing broccoli on our
Broccoli's
farm.
tough.
We used to grow beautiful broccoli, but there was a pest that came in called sweet midge.
Oh yeah.
And it's been really, really challenging. And so we grow broccoli in the spring, but the fall broccoli has not worked for us for a few years. So we buy in broccoli and cauliflower as well. But everything else that you would expect in a CSA box, we grow, I would say.
I think so.
So one thing I want to make sure and mention is that you have a course called, it's Farm Spreadsheet Academy?
I run the Farmer Spreadsheet Academy, so this is something that I put together to help farmers better crop plan and manage their farm. And I do have an online course which is currently called Farm Spreadsheets for All Seasons, which helps plan out it's a spreadsheet based, and you can kind of plan out your budget and your crop plan for the year. And then there's also tools with it to monitor and manage your harvest. And then at the end, kind of wrap it all together, your planning data and your harvest data, so you can kind of analyze what happens and then get ready to plan the next year. And it's all spreadsheet based using Google Sheets. I chose that rather than build an app because it's just, it's easier to modify, easier to work with. For some people, it can be a bit intimidating to deal with the spreadsheets. But with the course, I do have a full set of templates that folks can just access and use as is, and then I'm there to help support when things don't go quite the way you hope they go.
Okay. And I was just reminded of this actually, and I was looking at the Farm Spreadsheet Academy webpage because just in the August Growing for Market, Dan Perkins of Perkins Good Earth Farm down in Indiana, he wrote an article a lot about, it was about overcoming decision fatigue, which was a really interesting idea in the article. I had never thought about it exactly in this way, but he was talking about how the more decisions that you make before the intensity of the season hits. So basically, like in our case, winter planning, basically the more you have planned out before the season hits, the less decisions you have to make in the heat of the season. And he cited extensively Farm Spreadsheet Academy as the system that he was using.
I was thrilled to see that. Emily had read the issue first, and she called me over, and I was thrilled to see that there. I was not expecting it at all.
Okay, well that's good because I meant to give you a heads up that was coming up. Clearly, I forgot to do that.
It was a nice surprise.
Okay,
better than a smear article.
Yeah, well we can make that article by Dan Perkins about how he used Farm Spreadsheet Academy in his planning to relieve some of his decision fatigue. So we can make that public as part of that. And actually, I did mean to give you a heads up. It's because he included a lot of screenshots and things like that of the templates, which were really helpful for me because I am not a spreadsheet maniac. And so because I know one of your social media.
It used to be Spreadsheet Maniac. I've just changed it to danbrisebois.farm.
Oh, okay. So everybody who is wondering what happened to Spreadsheet Maniac, it's over at
danbrisebois.farm.
There we go.
What I've done with the Farmer Spreadsheet Academy is I've made those spreadsheets much better. And so there is a free version that anybody can download and have access to. And then the course goes into these more elaborate templates that Dan had screenshots of. It can be very difficult just based on the templates to see how they interact with each other, which is why I put together the online course. So the online course is both the templates and how to use them, because it's just as important. It's because there's a lot of interaction of you put things in here and then it's popping up somewhere else, and then decisions that you make, how it influences down the line.
Yeah. How can people, if people want to know more about the spreadsheet aspect?
So if people go to danbrisebois.com, in the menu there's a little thing that says courses, and you can go there, and I have a spreadsheet course. I also have a seed course, but there's the spreadsheet course that you can get access there. And I think also on danbrisebois.com, if you scroll down.
Is it .com or .farm?
Well, actually, danbrisebois.farm redirects to danbrisebois.com.
Okay.
And so they come to the same place.
Okay, so either way they'll get to you. Okay.
But if you scroll down on the main page, there is a block that kind of leads you to the crop planning templates also, if you just want to see what the basic stuff is and kind of get started before making a decision to go to the next level.
Perfect. All right. Well, I feel like that's been a really nice overview of what you guys do. Is there anything else that you want to say or that I should have asked you about before we walk around and take a look?
So, something like, I don't want to misrepresent the roles that I play or that we play, but we're part of a much larger team. So you're just hearing two voices and two perspectives of all of that. And like we've been talking about the CSA and the growing the vegetables, I haven't worked in vegetable harvest in like almost, maybe not 10 years, but maybe 6 years. Maybe it's getting 10 years. And in distribution, I haven't, like since about 4 years, I haven't been to a CSA drop-off. So we're talking about what's going on, but I haven't been doing that work. And that's one of the bonuses about being part of a co-op, is that you can have a larger business happening and not worry about certain things, and they still get done really well. And so that's something I just wanted to bring into, or to make sure was said.
Yeah, sure. Well, that's a really good point to make, because I think so many farms are a solopreneur, or a couple, two people whatever, working together, and everybody wears so many hats. I think that's good for you to know, but also that must be one of the strengths of your system, is that everybody doesn't have to wear all the hats.
I think it's a real strength. And before we were talking about co-ops, so it's not necessarily easy to start a co-op. You have to have the right mix of people. You have to learn how to work together. But I think if you can get it going and you can have a good structure, I think that's also what we're trying to do, is create a model that people can kind of not necessarily copy, because every co-op's going to be different, like every farm's different, but something at least to be inspired by. But if you can get going, I think co-ops have a much more longevity potential than a single person or a couple who then have to worry about how the kids are going to take over the farm. What's going to happen afterwards?
Well, you want to take a look
I would
around?
love to.
Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah, let's
Okay.
not fill up everything else.
Great.